one thing I've learned. If you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying incondescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way on the people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire.
Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Osiancic, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. In year 18, as we watch the war of 2020 in full swing. I'm doing an audio only today. I could sit and play kinds of clips and videos of what's going on. I am making the assumption that most people who are listening have access and seeing these clips, many of which aren't being played on the mainstream. However, there are some mainstream media covering this. In fact, they are covering it, but they're doing their spin to present it to you. Rather than just show it to you, they're trying to apologize, be apologists for the reasons behind the protest, quote unquote, and downplaying or outright ignoring when those who co-opt that protest to do thuggery and looting and violence. I would say that those people who are doing those violent things, some of them are simple, thugs. I came up with an actual nice phrase earlier. Brigands and, those type of lowlifes who are basic, small-time thieves who see an opportunity. I remember watching when they were talking about the protest for the death of George Floyd, watching a guy stack up 5 big screen TVs on a Target cart and bringing out to his car. I'm thinking that's justice for the police brutality. No, it's just there's the people who are upset ideologically or about this and seek to let their feelings be heard in the constitutionally protected process of peaceable assembly, as it's called, to redress grievances. And then there is the lowlifes who decide an excuse to go rob places. And they come in all colors and flavors. I guess the masks, for the COVID masks come in handy now, so they can, I got to wear a mask, Before the Antifa thugs were obvious by their masks. Well, now that we're a masked society now, that works out to their benefit. They can wear the masks and get some anonymity, or not be that obvious, I guess, by having a mask out in public. Now it's common to do that. I'm not laughing in funny. I'm laughing in sadness, irony, cold irony. But even when I was watching WGN in Chicago earlier, and they were actually covering some of the riots and looting that was going on. A lot of places weren't. The mayor of cities downplaying it, but once it gets out, now they're going to be sending in, after it's been several days, they're sending in the troops, because just like with the COVID governors during the COVID crunch, people said that Trump should have got in. President Trump should have done something, and he allowed them to do their thing. It would have been a bigger constitutional issue if he got involved. He allowed them and the people of their states to stew in the broth that was being cooked by those governors and mayors. And when the people stood up, I know in Illinois, there's 8 lawsuits, one of which is seeking to unseat Pritzker. And boy, let me put my signature on that one. When that happened, all of a sudden he decides to open things up. And that's what happened. The people stood up, and I guess either he bluffed. See, I think the goal here was to try and do this as long as possible. I mean, they really didn't think they could have done it till next year, but they do it as long as possible to do as much damage to the economy and to this country. Well, if you think I'm being paranoid or overdramatic or some kind of right-wing nut, you don't know me, and you should go back to my shows for the last 18 years to see who I am. Now, those who know me personally know that I am not a right-wing extremist. I am not a racist. I am a looking for the truthist. I'm looking for realityist. Lack of contradiction to show what is real and what is true. And when I see it, that's what it is. And what this is right now, of course, is it's not protesting for the brutality death. That was the pretext. That was just like the COVID virus was not the reason for the shutdown. That was the pretext. If you go back to the beginning of the COVID, they were all downplaying it, Fauci included. They were all downplaying it. No big deal, no big deal. Then all of a sudden it was like, wait, we got an idea here. We could use this. And they came up with the models for 2 million deaths. Trump balked. We all balked. Hey, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And this is the fool me twice. Once we saw it wasn't happening, once we saw these things were going on, we saw the contradictions. It started to back off. People were going out. They were challenging them. The police said they weren't going to arrest them, and they were losing it. So time for Plan B. And it doesn't mean that the actual death of George Floyd was planned to do this. It was an opportune time. It happened, and they went, okay, let's do it. Just like the COVID. Okay, we can use this. Okay, we can use it. And, of course, this one, you knew somewhere, someday, somebody was going to get shot. A black guy was going to get shot by a white cop or restrained and died. They are saying that the death was not asphyxiation, but it was other things, drugs in his system, his heart problems. But, I'm thinking the guy didn't put his knee on his neck for 8 minutes, I probably would be alive. So while it wasn't premeditative murder and the health condition of the person who's under the knee did cooperate in the death of that said person, obviously the restraint was inappropriate. But anyway, the point is that was used. And so now the pre-designed Antifa thugs, along with the lowlifes, that go out and riot and steal things, as with Rodney King. The Antifa thugs are out there spreading around, going city to city, coordinating it. There's money involved. There's one of my favorite pictures was a guy who was going around with a hammer breaking windows, and two different accounts said one of them he was throwing stuff in to start fires, but he was at least breaking the windows, all in black. And one of the pictures of him showed the little curly Q earpiece thing that went from his ear, came down from his hat he was wearing, his head covering, down under his black T-shirt. There's that little boom that was there. And, hey, so that guy was not just some guy, you know. He was walking around doing his pre-done thing. And if people looked into, I am not a history scholar. I mean, I know what I know when I know it. I come across it. I remember what I remember. I remember principles more than details. But if you look into the cultural revolution of Mao, late 50s and 60s, this is the version for America in the 2020s. This is the same deal. You're pitting, in China at the time, there wasn't races. They were all Chinese. But you were pitting ideology against ideology. You had the emperor, the throne, you know, and then you had the workers uniting and all this same spiel for Cuba, going against the corrupt, oligarchic, casino-driven type groups. And then you had the uprising of the masses, which turned out just to create meet the new boss. He's more oppressive than the old boss. And you can go through Lenin and so on. So, but I think that the Maoist Cultural Revolution is a better example of what's going on right now. And they're playing race against race. The blacks and browns versus whites, the haves versus have-nots. But if you notice in the carnage in all of these cities, it is the people who can afford it the least suffering, as well as their businesses are burnt down, their homes are built down. One of the buildings that were burnt was a low-income housing. So it's obviously, it's not about that. It's complete thuggery with the goal of creating chaos and disruption and to create political narratives to use in a free society. Now, you go back to Hitler's day, he had no problem with these guys. He just went and killed them. It disappeared because he was king or whatever. In Mao, when he now actually Hitler was taking care of the communist version of this stuff, and then of course started their own version of oppression and murdering. Of course, any type of absolutes caused that. And when you look at you go from the absolute monarchy now to the absolute Mao Zedong and his millions of murders. Of course, you know, then there's Cuba. And I don't know how, I mean, I know there's propaganda on all the sides of it, but when you deal with what was happening in Cuba, while the U.S. and its political issues with Cuba, as well as Venezuela, there's still definitely a lot of meat on the bone for oppression in both cases. So this is our time. This is the deal. Okay, if you look back at the timeline, you go back from Trump running for president. Oh my God, they're worried about him. Why? Because he's an outsider. They don't have anything on him. And since we've gone through all of these, all the pseudo scandals that they had to create because there isn't anything there to use, and here we are. So we know the guy doesn't have that stuff in his background. Nonetheless, they did it at first. They tried to overturn the election, to prevent the election, not have him sworn in. I mean, do I need to go through all of this? We've heard it for months now. You know, the latest thing was the impeachment. That failed. Now we got the COVID, and they were going to go after him for all the deaths that happened. That didn't happen because he acted wisely. He brought the ships both to the East and West Coast, built hospitals, made deals with Ford and other companies to make ventilators. I mean, he did everything was needed to do, only it was a non-event. People who died, a lot of them were old, who were placed in nursing homes, and guess what? The Cuomo and other people did. They put the disease right in there. Got to get those numbers up, I guess. I mean, we're talking about psychopaths, psychopathetic, oppressive, the Neo-Maoists, the Neo-Bolsheviks, what do you want to call them? This is what we're dealing with here. They don't play games. They are playing for keeps, and if it takes the death of the country, it doesn't matter. When you're a psychopath who wants power, all you need to do is have power and be able to assert it. I don't care. You don't care. As long as you're in the palace, it don't matter what the rest of the place is. I'm king of trash, and I can push it around. I'm happy about that. This is what psychopaths do, and psychopaths are always attracted to power. The more the power, the higher caliber psychopath is attached to it, attracted to it. And the lower ones are weeded out. The low IQ, low level psychopaths are the ones who kill their a stranger to get their jacket or whatever. And then as you go up the ladder, you get more sophisticated. You go from kill for cars or women or men or position. And as you go up the ladder of sophistication and intelligence, you have the big boys, big girls playing up on the top in leaders and Congress and president and so on. And you got Trump coming in here. Well, you can call him brass, you can call him ego, but the guy is actually trying to help the country, as opposed to these other people who are becoming so transparent as they try to destroy the country. It's scorched earth in 4K. All right, is what we're doing here. That's the goal. You won't acquiesce and vote who we want and do what we want. We will burn it all down because you ain't getting it. We are. And if we have to rule over a pile of ashes, so be it. And I'm hoping that President Trump and all those people involved in there who are not involved in that side, and I'm sure there's plenty, once they get that in their skull and realize that this is a battle to the death of somebody, we'll start making progress. For those who are in the Chicago area where I am outside of it, but near it, near enough to the stench. Been born and raised there all my life, but starting to move out to instead of from the burning down the inner cities and the downtown areas, they're moving out perhaps toward the suburbs. And so this one is way worse than Rodney King, way worse than the one that was in Missouri. I forgot the name now. This is going forward. This is the deal. This is like the next line. And when this works its way through, of course, back in the COVID days, you didn't know what was going to happen. Right? You didn't know if you're going to have 2 million die or whatever like that. So there's that, I don't know what's going to happen. Right now we're in that place. We don't know what's going to happen. We know that the United States and the various law enforcement agencies are stronger than these people to do it. But if you look at Syria, for example, I've said a long time ago, a revolution in America would look like Syria or Afghanistan. And what the difference is the extreme left is trying, the Maoists, the Neo-Bolsheviks, Bolshevists, are trying to make Trump be Assad and have the ANTIFA be the freedom fighters. This is the narrative that's being written up, is being pushed right now. And frankly, I haven't done a lot of mainstream following on this. I'm not prejudging. I just have seen so much of it over the last years that I can predict the reactions in any situation. So now they're going to have Trump be the divider, even though it was the media and the leftist politicians who were the dividers. But of course, they projected onto Trump. If you're in a dysfunctional relationship, you have the irrational person will project onto you what the problem is in the relationship, which is them. I mean, this is just common, simple psychology, and this is what they're doing. And unfortunately, the harder they... Now, I think Trump winning was really a surprise to them because they had their whole plan done. Hillary was going to come in there and continue doing their thing that they did with Obama and so on and continue down the road. We wouldn't have probably had to have a COVID. We wouldn't have had to have these It's because you have Trump and his followers standing in the way, you need to have these other things pop in. So their message could have been like, if you would have just stayed in the pot as the frog and let it go up degree by degree, you would have had a nicer life while it lasted. Now instead, no, you're going to jump out the pot? Well, we're going to have to kick it into a more overt and a more, oddly enough, honest approach of being dishonest. And that's the silver lining in this, is that they're making themselves more evident to more people. When you're like the one fireman who saved his life, he opened up a restaurant bar. Before it could open, it burned down. I believe it was a black fireman. If we're counting races here, this goes to show, hey, wait a minute, this isn't about race. This isn't even about class. It's about a Neo-Maoist American-style cultural revolution to bring in oppression by these oligarchic communists. You could use the word communist. It doesn't matter. I mean, communism, capitalism, all these things aren't really what they say they are. They're being run by people. And as long as the people at the top are at the top, you can use any ist or ism to get the ball rolling. And the problem with here in this country, over all the other countries, you have the Constitution, which is the basis law. They have to get rid of that or circumvent it. And when Trump came in and started putting in some Supreme Court justices, holy cow, I think that's probably the biggest, baddest thing he did, is that it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to have the leftist ideology when you have people who actually read the Constitution and try to follow it and what it means. So we have the, it'll be, it's still going on, right? It's still going on now. I mean, it's not, again, like when we were in COVID, a couple weeks into it, going on, what's happening. It's funny to see people on Twitter who normally support Trump. Trump was off Twitter for 14 hours. And that, never happened, right? So there's people who normally support the president or at least sympathetic toward his policies. Hey, where's the president? He should be addressing the nation. He should be doing, where is he? Where is he? Now, when the left goes crazy when he tweets, they ought to be worried when he doesn't, because you think he's out getting a haircut, having a hot dog, watching an old sci-fi classic or something. No, you bet that he has been in deep planning with how to handle this. I mean, that's how he does everything else. I mean, he all of a sudden just didn't wake up and go, I'm tired of this. Let's play. He's gonna be in deep planning, serious deep planning how to deal with this latest thing. This whole ANTIFA thing is nothing new. It's been going on since he got elected, but it kind of went in the background because all right, we'll save that for later. Here's the later. And when you watch his tweets now, you would say oh, that's it. Well, why don't you do something more? He's what is the word? They say trolling. I don't like that. They're punking, but he's playing. We're in a giant TV reality show. This is what we are in. It's a TV, because it's not reality. I mean, it's reality in that we are in it, really, but it is a narrative, a battle of narratives. And Trump is coming in trying to use the constitutional storyline. I don't know what you want to call it. And so he's being the king of reality TV, among other things. It's great to have him in there now because he knows the political ramifications, and he knows that they're playing chess, trying to force him into making moves. I read a thing saying a post saying that they probably want by not opening the states and watching his precious economy collapse, they figured that's going to be where they can goad him into overreaching himself and taking over for the states, and then they would nail him for that. But he didn't. He let these states, the blue states and blue cities, drown themselves, and all of those people lost credibility. You have people in these various states, Michigan and Illinois, the ones I'm more familiar with. You have people who are Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. They're all out there protesting about the states being locked down. So Trump's plan, like he is with Iran, is to just let the people be so frustrated by their leaders that they'll make change. The same kind of a program. Well, here he does it with the states as well. Excuse me. So now you have this going on, and he didn't intervene, so therefore they couldn't go after him for abuse of power. They tried to lay 100,000 deaths on him. It didn't stick because he did all these things, and there's so much video. And thank goodness they got a press secretary now who does her homework, and not afraid to just show their own face back at him. That's excellent. And so that's okay. So COVID is now backing off. Now you got Fauci going, well, it probably won't have. We don't mean we have to have another wave, and masks are symbolic. Was the last thing I read. So just like the Ukraine impeachment disappeared and COVID appeared, COVID was failing, and what their plan was, boom, here's another one. Here is the race riot, the stoked race riot, but really it's ANTIFA. It's thuggery, it's terrorism is what it really is. Got a painting, a cloak of racism on the top for all flavors to be able to point fingers at each other. But when I see these riots and I see the looters, I look at thugs. I don't look at race. It's not like, there's black guys. There's thugs. And there are plenty from all races involved. It's thuggery. Depends on what part of it. In Chicago, in particular, it's very, very segregated in areas. So it depends on what areas it's at. I did. I had some. I posted some things on my Facebook page. Again, not a fan of Facebook. It's just convened at this point till I get thrown off, which is probable. They've already limited me. I can't post from my feettothefireradio.com page. It won't let me. So, I'm sure I'm not that important, though. If I had 1 million subscribers, it'd be different. I'd be gone already. But anyway, I post on there, and I try to keep some of the more important links anyway. I'll put them in the notes below on this. But citizens armed with AR-14s protect Salem storefronts during protests. This is in Oregon. One of the people who dared to open up a store and risk social distancing. I'm going to assume that social distancing doesn't matter. I mean, it's all done now. COVID's gone. Now you can go out and riot and not worry about, and where, the mask come in handy, right? So the COVID is now gone. But this person who opened up her shop was being called. They're trying to kill grandmas or whatever by opening up her shop. Well, she got a lot of threats, which is not coincidence, during these riots. So she put a call out for people to come protect her. Now, apparently in Oregon, you can walk out with an AR-15 in public. In Illinois, you would have the SWAT team attacking you, because I'm learning now as I get more gun savvy about the laws that Illinois is extremely oppressive. But these people heeded the call. I was going to say head would be the past tense of heed and head. They heeded the call and came out and stood in front with their AR-15s pointing to the ground, hands not on a trigger, just standing there. And, hey, how about that? Nothing happened. Isn't that kind of amazing? Amazing how that works out. There's not, in fact, what, Twitter chastised the president for using the word thugs? Oh, my God. It's a perfect word to describe these people who are doing the violence. And, of course, the leftist, Saul Alinskyist, wham makes it like, well, if you're gonna talk about the people who are looting, right, we're gonna say you're talking about the people who are protesting. We're just gonna project and lay that over them. So if you say these guys are thugs, so it's protesting is thug. What? It's because they're black? Or they got, see what I mean? It's all crap. You can't argue with people like that because they're all lying, cheating scum. They don't want to find truth. Truth is their enemy. They want their narrative is the truth they want. Anyway, so these citizens show up with the guns. Now, I saw a very disturbing video of a lady who was standing out front of her store trying to reason, I guess, plead with these people to not destroy her store, and eventually almost succeeding, and then they're leaving, right? Well, somebody comes by and starts beating her up, and the people come back, like, sharks to blood, and they started beating her with a 2x4. Now, I said, I had posted on Twitter to this, I said, this is a poster. She's like the poster child for concealed carry, because if she would have produced a weapon after when she was being attacked, they would have ran away. She wouldn't have to shoot anybody. Just pull out the gun and be like, yeah, here's a real threat. No, we want to go find some chump to beat up, and a simple thing. And they would have ran away, which is another reason why I think concealed carry or open carry is appropriate, because not only constitutionally, but she would not have been beat, the bejesus beat out of her, nor her store robbed. And again, she wouldn't even have to fire a shot. Just being prepared to defend yourself in a way, delivering force that is greater than what's coming at you, they just move on to somewhere else. Excuse me. I have been talking. I'll talk, other than I get phone calls from some people, and people like Kelvin and Robert in the Jersey will attest. I can talk for a while, but I'm getting a little animated. I haven't talked in a couple days, so this is where the coffee is coming from. So I wrote, I presume the president will continue his policy of letting the blue state governors and blue city mayors expose themselves as criminals as they let their cities burn. The painful short-time hurt for a long-time game win when those states and cities or congressional districts vote the people out when they see what they really are. Meanwhile, he continues to expose corruption and now adds terrorism facilitators to that revelatory list and offers help to states who wish it. So I could see the plan. I'm trying to look. It's a first COVID-19 overreaction puts 30 million out of work and kills many small businesses. Now riots break out across the land to add violence and destruction to that picture, and it's only the end of May. I wonder what else is planned before the election. And I'm thinking, I bet there's something going on for 4th of July. Let me go on my list here. A couple of... the mayor of Chicago commented on the rioters. I'm sorry, she said demonstrators. In Chicago as obscene disrespect in the Windy City. I thought of the old mayor, the old man Daley, not our recent mayor or the recent mayor, but his father in '68 when they had the riots. And those riots were a walk in the park compared to this stuff. And he sent the police out with orders to shoot to kill for looters. That was and he was a Democrat, may I add. A very strong and corrupt, but nonetheless Democrat. So I wrote they should be able to use RICO laws to go after Antifa. Now, apparently, now that they are, I don't know if the president have officially named them. He was going to. I guess there has to be paperwork lined up. The legal people got to get on it. But if he names Antifa as a terrorist organization, it seems to me that all their financing, people who are in it, people who fund it, are all going to be on the same list of people who would fund like Hezbollah or something like that. So, I remember the story when how they're turning over and burning police cars. I was escorted to the police station in Chicago for cracking a police car's taillight lens with my truck. As I turned a corner, I couldn't see, and I better stop and look. And it turns out I just touched the lens cap and cracked it. A line went in the lens cap. They decided, after taking me to the police station, they decided to only give me a ticket for destroying city property. And when I went to court, they warned me that I would be arrested if the bill wasn't paid to fix the car, which turned out to be $75. Imagine fixing a car for $75. Granted, it was in the 80s. I guess now by today's standards, I guess it would have been easier for me if I just burned it down. Then all right, go ahead. I had to put a black mask on first, maybe, and then I could have burned it down. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I come up with these like blurbs, when I'm on Facebook, and I try to duplicate a lot of them on Gab. If you haven't tried Gab.com, you should. It's a Twitter alternative. It's a true free speech thing because there's all kinds of knuckleheads on there too, but you could just simply block them and not have to deal with them. They won't see you, you won't see them. But in true freedom of speech, you're going to have knuckleheads, and you just don't listen to them. In the case of somebody speaking in the public square who's talking about some revolution, something, you just walk away. When it comes to social media, you can just block them. Except in Gab, no one blocks you for your point of view, as asinine or as intelligent as it may be. So I try to do that. So if you're on Gab, or if you haven't tried it, tens of thousands of people are going to Gab in the after being deleted or limited in Twitter. And I would say that I would recommend Gab as a dual thing, because I don't want to just leave Twitter or Facebook, because basically you're allowing the propagandists a very large swath of a public forum to be used for propaganda. So I wouldn't want to do that unless I'm tossed out. But if people listening, try Gab, Gab.com. My, I don't know what you call it, my ID or whatever is F, the number 2, F. F, the number 2, F. Digit 2, F2F. That is my name over there. You can get on there and, so anyway, pathetic lies used in the power struggle as big oligarchic bloodline chess game, as a big oligarchic bloodline chess game for world domination. They use us as pawns facilitated by propagandists in the MSM. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a battle for the world. There's several bloodlines of oligarchs that go back thousands of years, I would imagine, and they're all trying to make their way in this. There's going to be strike, counter-strike. There probably isn't simply good guys, bad guys. There's probably an array of guys, and in this case, literally guys, who are running the show and fighting each other. I'm reading some of the comments. All right, I gotta switch glasses here. This is from Wendy Patterson. She's a person who's on Facebook and was on Gab. I guess she left. Didn't like the new format on Gab. And on Twitter, she wrote, "Does anyone else notice how quickly Democrats and the media dropped their calls for social distancing when it came to the riots?" Kind of said something similar earlier, but I came across that. Speaking of COVID, Frank Debrezeni, who is from the Black Knight Square G show, we work there. He's been really getting in on this COVID stuff. And over in Greece, they took a different approach to dealing with COVID. They had the lowest number of critical care beds in Europe. They imported 5 tons of chloroquine from India, and were using that, passing that out. They had a very high population of elderly, and they had a shortage of medical personnel, and yet only 17 deaths per million were found COVID-19. And as of today, only 175 people have died. In the U.S., we had surplus of everything. We had thousands and thousands of unused beds. We have so many ventilators they couldn't all be used. There were medical personnel, equipment, beds standing doing nothing while people died. The U.S. has a 319 per million population death. Greece, who used hydrochloroquine and was lacked significant numbers of ventilators, mass protective equipment, etc., high population density of elderly, they had 17 deaths per million. Very interesting. And as I said in the title of this really is, this is like COVID 2.0. You're adding violence in the mix, which was not there before, to further double down. Well, we really need to know that. We really need to see that so that you're not distracted. This is a straight line from the time that Trump ran and all of the lives they started through the coup, Russiagate, Ukrainegate, and all these other things, impeachment, all this stuff. It's all the same line. It's nothing has changed. It's the same line. Trump is not in the in crowd. Trump can do them harm and bring to light a lot of stuff that they've done, and they're trying to not do that. Now, they've delayed a lot of things he did in his first year. He's got to go for a second year just to be able to do what he could do. And this is Sidney Powell, which is the lawyer for Flynn, who I'm calling the real-life Perry Mason, has wrote, every person who does any damage to anything or anyone should be arrested and prosecuted immediately and detained without bail as both risks of flight and danger to the community, and find out who's funding and organizing this war on America. Bingo. And that's why I call her the real-life Perry Mason. All right. Now, on a side note, there's a newer company. The guy who made the World Wide Web. I mean, he actually designed the World Wide Web to work on the internet, because the internet was there before, but he came up with the World Wide Web aspect. That's where you got websites and the names and all this stuff. He invented that. He is starting another project, being upset by how the internet has been taken over and oppressed. He's working on Interrupt, which would be let's call it the new internet. It would use the internet. It would be the new, I guess, hypertext protocol. Perhaps that's not exactly correct, but it's the new language, because the internet is just like a wire, right? You got to have stuff going through it, and there's got to be a format of how it goes through it. And many different things can coincide on the same wire at different frequencies. So he's come up with this new one called Interrupt, and the server is called Solid, is the name of it, running on the Interrupt system to allow people to have their own data on their own system. They control all their own data. No one else collects it on their side. Now, I don't know all the details. I can't go into an answer on it, but I put up links about it that somebody could check into. It was I've heard about this from my sister, I believe. There are people working up alternatives to the current oppressive system. Now, I was a little disappointed. Supreme Court rejects church's challenge on mandatory limited attendance, but as I looked into it, it didn't say that the Supreme Court didn't say that municipalities can shut down churches. It just said that the municipalities can limit the amount of occupants. Just like when you go to any store, you'll see on the wall, this place is occupancy limit of 100 or whatever. And especially in bars and other things, you'll see when they get crowded, they got to stop letting people in because the fire department can shut them down for being in danger. Because there's the rule they look at is how many people can safely operate in the environment and be able to move relatively quickly in an emergency. Well, when you have the possibility of catching the viruses, they lower that number down. They want them farther apart, in other words. And that's what the problem was, is there were limits on how many people could be in a church not the one. Now, other people just shut down the churches. They lost in the court. They just turned it around. Because you can't go, yeah, you can stay open. Walmart can be open, but your church can't be open. Can't do that. But you can but what they're saying is that the churches, just like Walmart, can be limited by the municipalities to the amount of people in the church based on the risk from the disease. Now, I don't like any kind of limits on church from the state. So this is, to me, somewhat of a loss in that every little inch, every little step in the door, every little inch takes away from the free right to free exercise, freedom of religion, exercise thereof. So it's not good. And, of course, Roberts, the so-called conservative John Roberts, Justice Roberts is the one that was the deciding vote. You had the 4 liberals. You had the 3 originalist types, which they say are conservative, but I guess in the legalistic sense they are. They're conserving what the Constitution says. And Justice Roberts was the kick-in for that. All right, I might as well throw this in here. I've said this before, but I've been doing the show for 18 years. Well, I'm in my 18th year. I started out in 2003 doing the show. It started out as 2 hours, then it went to 3 hours, and it went to 4 hours for many years. And then it not being able to being involved with the radio station, being syndicated across the nation. It didn't pan out. The radio station or the station fell under the network. Went doing my own thing. Still did the 4-hour shows. Had multiple guests, reoccurring guests, and all this stuff. And eventually pared it back to a couple hours, usually one guest or just me. But I do have 17 plus years of shows available online for free because I'm not good at marketing, though. I've learned on the internet, you charge anything for anything, and you're going to lose 95% of people's interest. And since I really can't live on it anyway, and it's important to me to get information out. I mean, I'm not doing this for a living, which is good because I don't know if the homeless have internet, but I do have all the shows available. It's just that it would take me many hours of coding to piece back Humpty Dumpty because of what happened in switching servers. So if you go to feet2fire.com, which is my original website I started in 2003, you can go to the past show page, and on there is a search box using Google that you can put in names of guests or topics, and it'll list the shows. Now, there's a link to go to the HTML page that talks about the show, but you'll have to write down the date of the show, go back to that past show page, and there's a link to my Google Drive that has all the shows there from 2003 all the way up to, I don't know, I think it's 18. Because if you go to the latest website, feet2fire.radio.com, all the shows are there from 2017 onward. So let's say 2017 backward, audio only is available on the Google Drive. And you could use that search, or you can click on the links directly going to the year, and you can scroll up and down, find out what shows you want, write down the numbers, go back to that click, and go on the Google Drive. It's not that hard. Once you do it, you get used to it, no big deal. And then you can simply click on it and download it. Now, the 4-hour shows are in 2 parts because back in the day, a 4-hour MP3 was hard to host, and a lot of people were interested in the latter part of the show, which is usually a 2-hour guest interview. The first part of the show had multiple reoccurring guests and themes. So if you want, when you look at the page and it's toward the bottom, it's going to be in the second file, or just download both of them. It won't kill you to listen to them. You put them in go out walking or, drive-in or whatever and listen to them. But all the shows aren't listed in 2003 to 2006 because back then I didn't have the bandwidth for it. I had to delete shows. We're all there now. It's just that some of these you don't know what's on them, so you could just download them and listen to them just for the heck of it. Especially if you're infirmed or laid up at some point and you have some time to kill, you have 17 plus years worth of shows to listen to, you know. So I put that on Facebook and it's on feedthefireradio.com. The link to the original website is there. And on that page, it tells you exactly what I just said. So back in the day, I've interviewed so many people. Recent times, people talked about James McKinney. I've had him on many times. The remote viewing guys I've had on, Ed Dames, and I go on and on. You can go back to the Planet X days back in 2003. Nancy Leader, the David Booth thing, and the whole third secret of Fatima, and all that stuff. All those times, all those topics over the years are all there, and you can and they're all available for free. Bones will be accepted if you want to throw a few. So that is there. I want to mention that down. Also, Trump was censored in some way by Twitter for calling the writers thugs, and of course the YouTube memory machine, the YouTube Wayback Machine, or whatever. People found a nice speech by then President Barack Obama calling the rioters thugs. And so I wonder, I did send it to Twitter and asked if this is going to be banned as well. Of course, I understand they don't care. They're going to listen to them. I know James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of talk radio, caught us. Ooh, what are we going to do? They don't care. So. Okay. That's it. Degenerate barbarism. That's the phrase they came up with to talk about the thuggery. So it's degenerate barbarism. This is back in the Vikings, all across there, where they just slash and burn, rape the women, kill the warriors and the men, take slaves. This is our version of it, slightly altered for our civilized society. I have that in quotes, but that's what it is. Tucker, I have a link to it here, had a good show the other day. He actually posted the segment himself, and it's very good. When you express an opinion our leaders don't like, they call it violence. When criminals commit acts of actual violence, they call it speech. In other words, the game is rigged. Did a fantastic job of laying it out. And somebody responded to my post by saying the George Carlin bit, which I've heard many times, it's a big club and you ate in it. So I'm looking down. There's some, again, there's a lot of little sayings. The Bill of Rights is not a list of things the government gave you. It's a list of things they can't take away from you. All right, so, I want to get somebody who's an expert, and I have a tentative with the local gun shop owner. I want someone who knows about things, because as far as I understand it in Illinois, if a thug stands outside your house and throws a Molotov cocktail at your house, you cannot shoot them for self-defense. I believe that's the case, because in Illinois, it's not a stand-your-ground state. You have to flee, and the gun can be used as like a last resort. They're coming to stab you or shooting at you. You can reluctantly go, well, okay, you could use that, but and that's crazy, because they're all practical purposes. They're taking a weapon who's going to destroy your house. But this is the kind of craziness that's in Illinois. All right, I think a lot of this stuff now. Yeah, the city, Chicago mayor, sent the police to shut down a black church like Soviet KGB style, the pastor said. You can't have the church open. Well, now, but you can have people in the streets. Isn't it funny how they just started opening up the state? Boom, riots. Again, it's not coincidence. think I'm. Another study in India, no major side effects of HCQ can be used to prevent COVID or used as treatment. All right, I think I'm going to. Yeah, and since the last time we did the show, the judge, people were, Pritzker, our governor, was hammering down, and a judge unloads on Pritzker's stay-at-home order. Americans don't get ruled, and so it's been overturned. That's why he acquiesced on it, because he had no choice, really. But he wanted to do it on your terms. And for the vaccine people, JFK Jr., fantastic stuff. If you find him, his website is fantastic. CDC is not an independent agency. It is a vaccine company. The CDC owns over 20 vaccine patents. It sells about $4.6 billion of vaccines every year. Now, how does that fit into them pushing to have a vaccine with this COVID thing? Interesting. And on the voting fraud, various individuals are putting pictures on Twitter showing, in this case, I've received 5 ballots in the application. 4 for the people that used to live here 7 years ago. I could send all of these in and receive 5 ballots to vote. That's why we shouldn't have mail-in voting. And for the total of, as of May 16th, with a population of America of 332 million, with the, quote, inflated death toll of 89,000, this is back in 2016, that means 0.00027% of our population. Now, if for people who do have access to Facebook, I do have a page for Feet to the Fire Radio. You can look that up. Basically, what I post there, however, is just access to the shows, which still might be nice. I do have another page that I have. It's called the Extremist Left Watch. That's facebook.com/left extremist. And you can join that page, and you can get the messages that I put up there, which are specifically geared toward. I got tired of using my personal page to have all this stuff on. And in these days of the riots and looting and thuggery and barbarism, I have a lot more action on that page, so you might want to check that out. You can join it or whatever. It's no charge or nothing. It's just if you're interested in that. All right, I think I'm going to call it a night here. This is an audio-only presentation that's found on Spreaker, but it will be uploaded momentarily when I get done to Facebook. And tomorrow it will appear on BitChute.com. Even though those are video formats, it's just the audio, but it's the place to put it. So yeah, also if you go to feettothefireradio.com, you can join the newsletter in there. I turned off any of the tracking information on there, so I don't even know who's looking at it what. But it would be an easy way for me to get a hold of you with the advent of me disappearing from Facebook. So if you are a Facebook person, I don't sell or share any of the emails, and I only send out an email generally when I have a new show or if there's some important information. I don't send it out a lot, but if you sign up there, it will be, and you'll get an email which will have you verify it because it stops the spam and all that. You can be in touch with what's going on here. I presume I will disappear from Facebook someday, and this will be a way to still keep in touch. FeetToFireRadio.com will have all the shows. They still have all the shows. Go back to 2017. Plus, I mentioned links to the old website that has everything back to 2003. Back in the days when we were worried about things like Planet X, now we have this. So, all right, we'll see you later. God bless. beattothefireradio.com. That is the place. Hey, Ancient One, thank God Almighty is God Almighty.
Oh, my old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walked again, the ancient one of old, with wisdom for the new, revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, ancient one.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the ONSIG radio network of stations.